Prova, prova, ecco. Iniziamo con un canto per prepararci a questo satsang. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuor, vivrò sempre in te, Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuor, vivrò sempre nel Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuor, vivrò sempre nel Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuore vivrò sempre nel Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuore vivrò sempre nel Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, wake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuore vivrò sempre nel Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, mi sveglio nell'amor, nel silenzio del cuore vivrò sempre nel Signor. Nel silenzio del cuore vivrò sempre nel Signor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Mi sveglio nella luce, vivrò in te, Signor, libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor. Libero e beato nel tuo eterno amor.
Prendiamo un attimino per unirci sul livello della coscienza. Let's take a moment to unite on the level of our consciousness. In gratitude to Jyotish and Devi. In gratitudine per Jyotish e Devi. Aperti a ricevere, open to receive. Amen. Prima domanda importante. Italiani, avete cuffie? O capite inglese?
There's a problem with the receivers. They're not receiving.
So, yes.
Sorry.
In the meantime, welcome Jyotish and Devi to their last before last public event with us. Prima che iniziamo voglio dare un grande benvenuto a Jyotish e Devi. It's working.
Okay. Speak in English.
I just said it in English. So, today there is a questions and answer session, and Sunday is Sunday service. Our last 2 moments to be with these 2 great souls and receive all their loving wisdom and inspiration. So there are a few questions I saw, but if you have questions, please raise your hand. Non funziona? Allora, italiani, mettete l'affermazione io capisco inglese.
Okay.
So, in inglese? Ok. Prima in italiano, un po'. So, buona serata a tutti. Mi dispiace che questa è la settimana ultima del nostro tempo qui a ASSISI e vorremmo ringraziare tutti e voi per la nostra amicizia divina e specialmente per i vostri vite in Dio, che è un grande legame insieme in Dio, e grazie per questo. L'anno prossimo sarà un'opportunità ancora di essere insieme. We hold to this.
This afternoon I serve as Devi's translator. So for the English speakers, what she said is, we're sorry that this is our last week here in Assisi. We love being here. And we will be back next year with a very big plan for having a celebration for Swami's 100th anniversary of his birthday. And next week we will go with a group from here, and we will go to Spain, where we will begin in Ávila, and with a 𝗙𝗃𝗃 retreat like this for all the 𝗙𝗃𝗃s that live in Spain and other places that will be coming. And then we'll travel to Sevilla and spend about a week traveling there, and then have a program there. But we're...
No, I will translate in Italian for Jyotish.
Lei parla italiano molto più velocemente e chiaro che me. Allora, Okay. We have some questions okay.
Sì, volevo chiedere, lo hai raccomandato di fare in una giornata 2 meditazioni, 2 sadhana. Ora, per una persona che diciamo che nell'arco della giornata è molto impegnata, cioè facciamo finta, cioè dalle 5 di mattina fino a mezzanotte è molto impegnata, pieno di attività, ok? Però riesce a trovare questi 15 minuti di tempo libero. Ovviamente nell'arco della giornata, vabbè, pensa sempre a Dio, fa i canti, fa quello spirito gioioso, si sta divertendo, ok. Però vuole un attimo fermarsi e fare pratiche spirituali. Però ha solo 15 minuti di tempo. Ora io prima di prendere Kriya facevo semplicemente, quello che mi sentivo di più è l'osservazione del respiro. Ok, facevo questo, che avevo pochissimo tempo. Però adesso che ho preso Kriya, ho pochissimo tempo, quindi 10-15 minuti, quale potrebbe essere una scaletta, per fare una pratica spirituale, come potrei fare in 15 minuti di tempo. E poi dopo devo riprendere subito le attività. Quindi questa è la domanda.
So, she'll translate. Good.
Most of it, but it's
No time for anything.
what?
15 minutes a day. What do I do? What techniques
Right,
should I do?
right.
And he's in Ukraine.
Okay, do you need to translate for the English speakers?
Yeah, maybe.
So he's,
Let Aruta do.
no, he's in Italian
sì,
for
sì,
the,
sì, sì.
so he's asking, it's wonderful when we have the time here in the temple and a long period of time for meditation. But what should I do if I only have 15 minutes? And how should I proceed? So it's a good question. Many times we find ourselves with a very short period of time. Now, first of all, let me say that for Kriya bonds, we need to begin to form our life around Kriya so that we have more than 15 minutes. I know many people that get up quite early in the morning because they need the time to finish their Kriyas. But having said that, we're still faced with this question: what are the priorities in meditation for a short meditation? If I had a very short meditation time like this, here's what I would do. I would offer a prayer to God and Guru, and I would then immediately start with Hong Sa, because Hong Sa is meant to draw the energy in and to concentrate it at the spiritual eye. So start with maybe 3-4 minutes of Hong Sa, and then do at least a minimum number of Kriyas. But when you have a short time, quality becomes very, very important. So you cannot allow your mind to wander during this short meditation. If you do, you have hardly anything. So if we think of, I don't know, Kriya as trying to build some amount of energy and interiorize it, you can build energy slowly over a longer time. You can build energy faster over a shorter time. The best, of course, is to concentrate for a longer time. But here we're coming back. So I would do a little bit of Hong Sa. I would do however many. I would do a minimum number of Kriyas, and then I would concentrate very, very deeply on self-offering and receiving for the remainder of the time. I'll just end, and Devi will answer too. It's very good to set a minimum number of Kriyas that you're going to do a day. And we did this many, many years ago. And then gradually I have increased the number of Kriyas, that I have basically made a vow to Guruji to do this many Kriyas in each sitting. And so I try not to get caught in the dilemma of having only 15 minutes. But if I do, sometimes I will need to split it a little bit. But nonetheless, set a minimum below which you will not go. Because if you allow your habit patterns to begin to drift downward and downward, and then you say, well, today I'm too busy to do Kriya. Tomorrow I'll do more. Then tomorrow arrives, I'm too busy to do Kriya. Tomorrow never, ever, ever comes. Every day is today. And so if you think you can do it tomorrow, you won't do it. And as we said at the Kriya initiation, so let's say that you say, I only have 15 minutes, I can only do 12 Kriyas. Well, you have saved yourself 12 years by doing those 12 Kriyas, but you have probably lost a lifetime of spiritual progress by saying, I don't have time. So mold your life around your Kriya practice, because for the devotee who is sincere about their spiritual progress, Kriya is the most important part. Kriya as the technique and as the lifestyle and as the self-offering that is afterwards. So I'm not saying just the number of Kriyas. The whole package of Kriya Yoga is the most important part, and it's the spiritual gift that has been given us.
Thank you, Jyotish. I will also answer because there's another way of thinking about this. I know you had Kriya for the first time on Saturday. You were one of the first initiates. So we've become very focused on the technique. But some of you in the room have not yet received Kriya. And so we don't want to only focus on technique. When you say if you only have 15 minutes, you don't have only 15 minutes, you have a whole day. And maybe you do certain techniques at the beginning, but energization is very, very important. We do it every day, and it keeps us strong and gives us energy. So maybe when you come home from work or from school, or when the children go off to school, whatever the circumstances of your life are, then you do energization. It doesn't have to be right before meditation, but do it every day. And then throughout the day, there's always little breaks. We had a friend who worked, we mentioned her in another class, who was a nurse in an emergency room in a hospital in San Francisco. She told us at lunchtime she would go out to her car in the parking lot and meditate for a half hour, then come back and eat her lunch quickly. So there's always time in the day if your mind is turned to God. If you think, okay, I'll do my techniques, I have 15 minutes, then get on with the day, then you are limiting your ability to draw God's presence into your life every moment. And when we certainly saw in watching Swami Kriyananda's life, I don't think I ever saw a moment when his mind wasn't turned to God. And so every moment of every day can be, we can be lifting our thoughts up to God. And and it's not just technique. If you think it's only technique, techniques are only the beginning. It's the offering of the heart and the mind all the time to God in whatever we're doing. That's what really makes the change in our life, okay?
Swami used to tell a story, kind of a joke, about a man who every morning he got up early, he meditated 3 hours before he took breakfast and then went to work. And the devil was watching this, and he got quite upset. So he said to one of his assistant devils, said, go down tomorrow morning and make him oversleep. And so the man overslept in his usual 3 hours. He woke up and he only had 15 minutes, and he did a quick little meditation, then he had to go off. And then the next evening, the devil told the assistant devil, tomorrow morning, go down and make sure that he wakes up at his usual time. Normally, he only meditates 3 hours. Yesterday, he thought about God all day long, apologizing for missing his meditation. And so, as Devi said, the technique is the technique, and it's important. But keeping your mind and your soul turned toward God, keeping that recollection. When she said Swami always had his mind toward God, that didn't mean that he was focused on thinking about God. It meant that in the back of his mind, but he had very powerful concentration on whatever he was doing. But Ramakrishna used this example. He said, if you watch a mother cow, she is busy eating her grass and moving around, but in part of her mind, she always knows where her calf is. And so have part of your mind always knowing that it's turned toward God.
But thank you. This was an important question, and I think helpful to everyone. Okay, I'll read one that came in that was submitted to us. What does Yogananda say is the right way to pray? Is it an act of self-offering and surrender of ourselves and or our problems to Him and offering up to Him? Is it a request for the strength and courage we need to face into our limitations and problems and then receive His grace? Or can we approach prayer as an act of kriya, where we both offer up and stay open to receive? Another very good question. Should I start?
You're there.
Okay. Well, prayer it's one of the most important aspects of building a relationship with God. And it draws also from the earlier question. One time, Master said to one of his first disciples, Dr. Lewis, he said, Doctor, you're praying wrong. You are praying to God. You should pray in God. The difference being, first meditate, first feel God's presence, and then prayer should be an inner dialogue. And not just, oh, please help me, you way up there. But God knows our needs. He knows our failures and our limitations. We don't have to tell Him. He knows them all already. But if you open an inner conversation with God, there was a man who was he was a Christian, great man of God, and he was a missionary in the Philippines, a Christian missionary. 𝗷𝗺𝗺 was his name. He wrote many books about prayer, and he became a great saint. And a friend of ours, parents, were also missionaries, and they went to a gathering with him, with this man, 𝗷𝗺𝗺, and they were going to, after he shared, they sat down to have a meal. And they said, Mr. 𝗷𝗺𝗺, will you please lead us in a prayer? And our friend's parents said it was so remarkable, because it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to pray now, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother. They said it was like it was a continuation of a dialogue that was always going on, but that he let other people hear in the prayer. So prayer is an inward experience. And if we can think of it as, yes, it's self-offering, of course it's that. Yes, it's asking for guidance in difficult situations. Of course it's that. But try to feel that God, the important thing is you should feel God is listening. He knows already. And our part is to listen sensitively to his response, which we often feel in our heart. And then we know our prayers have been received. And I'm sure many of you, I would imagine every one of you, have prayed for other people, if they're going through a difficult time or needing energy for healing, whatever it might be. But if you wait until you're still, and if you pray, oh my God, please don't let him die, God, it's not very effective, to tell you the truth. But if you get calm and centered and offer that prayer up, maybe the person, if we're speaking about a life and death situation, maybe they won't survive. But God will have given them, because of your prayer for them, you will have drawn God's grace to that situation. And so it's really, in prayer, you should feel like you are accompanied by a loving, wise, embracing energy all around you. And then you just focalize the thoughts on whatever prayer you want to offer and just feel that it's going out. And I have prayed both ways. I prayed, oh, please let this happen, please let this happen. And it didn't happen. And in retrospect, I realized, oh, that would have been terrible if that would have happened. God knew. He listened, he heard my prayer, but he said, not a good prayer. This one won't do. But then there have been other times when I have prayed for others, not for any particular outcome, but just for God's presence. And I have felt the connection, and I knew that the prayer was received. So it's really, prayer is an art, and it's the technique that is the most helpful is just to, through the meditation techniques and devotion, interiorization of consciousness, and then communion with God. And that's really the essence of prayer.
I would suggest for everyone here that if you don't already have a copy of Whispers from Eternity, that you get one. Devi and I read from that almost every day. It's a book of prayer demands from Yogananda, and there must be 150 different prayer demands, so almost every aspect, every little facet of life he covers in that. But there's also quite a long section at the beginning talking specifically about how to pray effectively. And among other things, Devi touched on it, but he said, do not pray as if you're a beggar. Pray, he called his prayers prayer demands, because he said, pray as if you know that you're a child of God. Or not as if, pray knowing that you're a child of God and that you're asking him to help in whatever situation you're asking. Then I'll touch also on what Devi said. I rarely pray for specific results. Only in certain cases does it feel right. But almost always I pray for God's grace to go to that person. That's why in our healing prayers that we do together, we say, Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all Thy children. Manifest Thy healing presence in body, mind, and soul. And that's one of the ways that Master said to work publicly. But not as part of that prayer did it say, I want this specific result. It's let Thy healing presence. So pray to God to have the grace, because as Devi said, what seems clear to us as a result that we want might be wrong. Swami again told a story about a young woman in India who had the power to heal people. She would pray very deeply and people would be healed. But her father had diabetes, and her family came to her and said, "You heal all these other people, why won't you heal your father?" And she said, "Well, it doesn't feel like something I should do." Well, they pressured her and pressured her. So finally she prayed for his healing, and he became healed. And then once his body was strong, he went back to old bad habits of drinking and running around with other people, and he left the family and walked off. And then the young girl said, "See, that's why I wouldn't pray for him." So God knows what's right karmically for a person more than we do. So try whatever you can to bring God's grace in. Now, if you're a healer, if you're working in helping people in some of the healing arts, assume that God is using your knowledge, your skill, your talent, your desire to heal people as his channel. So it's not like you do things half-heartedly. You do it with full concentration and everything that you can do, but do it knowing that it's not your power, but it's God's power flowing through you that does the actual healing. And so always there needs to be a connection between, because what is praying? That's a question. What prays? The ego is doing the praying. The bundle of self-definitions that seems separate from God. Now, generally speaking, now a master and great saints, they also pray, but they're rarely praying for themselves or praying on behalf of others. And so that's a different case. But when we pray from the ego isn't wise enough to know what we should really pray for. So pray for God's grace. Many of the prayers in Whispers from Eternity are more like affirmations than they are prayers. And they're almost like affirmations where Master is saying, pray in this way, and pray with intensity, pray with demand, so that you can convince yourself that you have the power to accomplish what the prayer is. And so, if you have a heavy luggage and you go and you say, "Somebody come here, carry my luggage for me." Well, God isn't going to respond to a prayer like that. But if you pray, "God, help me be strong enough to carry whatever luggage I need to carry in my life," God said, now you have the right prayer. And I'll just end by saying in fact, the woman considered the most advanced woman disciple of Yogananda. One time she was facing a big test in her life that she knew was coming. And she was going to pray, but she knew these basic teachings about prayer. And so instead of praying for a particular result, she sat down and she prayed very deeply, "God, what prayer will you accept from me?" Isn't that a beautiful prayer? What prayer will you accept from me? And the answer came back. And many of people I know have it printed as a little plaque that they hold. "God, change no circumstance in my life. Change me." And that's the kind of prayer that really helps. So we need to beware of thinking that what we think is right. What we think is what has gotten us to this point, but we're trying to advance beyond it. So with God's help, pray for the strength, the knowledge, the understanding in order to be able to achieve God's will.
I'll just add one thing.
Okay.
So just from what Jyotish was just saying at the end, from our own personal experience, some years ago, Ananda village in America went through a very, very big test, and our very existence was threatened by people challenging us legally and so forth. And it went on for many years. They were trying to stop the existence of our work, Swami and Master's work through Ananda. And we had a team which we called the legal team, and we were kind of the ones who did the research and produced the papers and helped the lawyers accomplish our goal, which eventually we were able to win in this situation. But it was so, in retrospect, it was so beautiful, because we all prayed every day, please God, give us the strength to do this. You know, we offer our life's work to Thee. But what happened, just as in that prayer of Jnanamata, the Master's disciple that Jyotish was referring to, little by little, the prayer develops faith. We could feel that everything would be all right. No matter what the judge's decision was, no matter what appeal the other side issued, we just knew that it was going to be okay. And that's, prayer develops faith, and faith changes who we are, because we realize whatever happens, we'll deal with it, we'll be strong. And in the end, Ananda prevailed, and the community became stronger than ever. But so it's important to understand that prayer, the biggest benefit of prayer is that it transforms our own consciousness and weds us to faith in God, where we realize You've always been with us. Even in the darkest hour, You were always there. So.
We'll ask whether there are any questions from any of you. We have some more written ones. Okay, Master said, I'll just add this little thing. I just read it last night or the night before. It was kind of surprising. He said, every thought that you think, every little tiny thing that happens to you has a divine purpose to it. And so, isn't that interesting? Everything has its own divine purpose. Now, some of the divine purposes is to help you realize that you're still acting out of ignorance and need to change. But that too is a thought that in fact, there's a man, a little kind of joke that this young apprentice comes to this older man who's always has very wise advice. And he said, how is it that you always have such good advice? And the older man said, well, my son, wisdom comes from experience. And the young man says, well, how do I get wisdom? Wisdom comes from good judgment, is what he said. And so how do I get good judgment? Bad judgment. In other words, okay, you get it. Okay. Sometimes it slows down with the earphones.
You know, we're going on about this, but there's so much one could say. Talking when Jyotish said, every little thing has a purpose. Many years ago, I had been out to give a talk or something in the evening at Ananda village, and I came home and I had a little bowl of pistachio nuts on a table. And I thought, oh, I'll have a pistachio nut in a shell, you know. And so I picked one up and I was just about to put it in my mouth and popped out of my hand. And I thought, that's strange. Picked it up, just about to put it in my mouth, popped out of my hand. And by this time I was thinking, I'm going to eat the pistachio no matter what. And then the thought came, maybe you're not supposed to eat that pistachio nut. But I know I was determined, so I took a bite and I cracked a tooth. And that taught me a lesson, because I recognize when I drop a pistachio nut, be it if I'm going to back into a parking place and I have that same feeling, I thought, no, don't do that. The God's trying to. So that, I mean, a cracked tooth can easily be fixed. But the warning of listen to when things are not going, maybe you're not supposed to go in that direction. And so it's a joyful way to live, to always be saying, God, what are you trying to teach me today? What am I supposed to learn? So it's very helpful.
Yeah, and just try to raise your level of being aware in the here and now. Because not everything you drop means that you shouldn't do something. But if your level of awareness, in fact, we were just talking with some friends last night about Swami, and sometimes he would do something or some of his advice. I was saying, I don't think that he did it like a chess master who thought, if I tell this person this thing, then this will happen and that will happen. Then in 3 years, this result will come into play. I think he just had an elevated consciousness, and the thoughts that came into his mind, because the radio receiver of his soul was very pure. Whatever came into his mind, he would say, try this or do that. And that's the way the masters work. They don't work mentally. They work intuitively and with God's grace. And we should try our best to emulate that. Don't always try to think things through. Ask for God's grace to guide you. Okay, next.
And then you can answer.
Okay.
I heard that we each have a certain amount of spiritual karma. What can I do to keep myself from slipping off the path and remain dedicated even when I feel pulled in other directions? It's a universal question.
Okay. This is a deep and complicated question. But first of all, because it implies how much free will do we have as opposed to how much are we driven. Karma just means action. So when we say spiritual karma, that's spiritual action. It should be the spiritual karma is the spiritual effects of past karma before or during this lifetime. So yes, we will have a certain built-up spiritual karma. And within every lifetime, we have a certain degree of free will. And so when a test comes, we will have free will to make a choice. And in fact, one could say that the whole purpose of life is to force us to make 10,000 choices, because the choices that we make will determine where our desires are. And so making all of those little choices, if we try our best to make them in alignment with our desire to find God, that will build our spiritual karma. I don't think God will ever give a person a test that is so severe that he turns away from God. So we can't blame it on karma. Oh, my karma made me leave the path. No, your karma influenced you in a certain direction, and you did not have the strength of will to say, I'm going to ignore that. Master, many of you have read this, but he went to an astrologer and the astrologer said that he was going to be married 3 different times. Would be married and his wife would die and he would remarry and so on. He took the astrological reading and crumpled it up and threw it into a fire, and he said, past karma that is burned up in the fires of wisdom has no power. And so we always have a choice. Anandaassisi, when asked, how much free will do we have? She said, we have this much. We're on a train that is being driven by our karma, and it has a certain track and a certain destination. But we have the free will to move to the front of the train or to the back of the train. And it's the direction of our movement that gives the individual free will that we have. So coming back to this question, there will never be a karmic tendency that is so strong that you have no free will to resist it. And even when, and this is important because we cannot, with our complexities, pass every test that's given to us. But what Swami said is when you have tests that come, perhaps you have a desire that you know is wrong for you, but it's such a strong urge. He said, then do your very, very best to resist that tendency, because that will build energy in the opposite direction. And coming back to prayer, Master said that if you're, say that you are diagnosed, you know that you have cancer and perhaps 3 months to live, do not think of yourself as having cancer and going to die. Keep constantly putting out the energy that your soul doesn't have cancer. Maybe your body does, but your soul doesn't. And he said if you can shift that consciousness that you have to one of health, then that produces the karma in the future where you have health. So it's a subtle question, it's a subtle thing, but we always have a choice of an upward direction and a downward direction.
The very first summer at Ananda was very interesting because it was as though the Himalayan saints were coming to bless this new ashram community and to give it uplifted energy, because we were all, other than Swamiji, we were all very new to the path. And they were beautiful souls came. And it was such, I remember every one of them. I don't know their names. They didn't have a following. Sometimes they came all by themselves. I don't know how they got to Ananda, but they were real yogis, because there wasn't any sense of self-importance or trying to look at my powers or trying to recruit new disciples. They were just bringing higher energy. And one evening, there was a satsang with one of these yogis, and I asked him a question similar to this. I had been at Ananda, I don't think even 1 year. And I said, how do we develop, I asked the yogi, how do we develop the kind of dedication and perseverance that will keep us on the path for our whole lifetime? And his answer was incomprehensible to me in the moment, but I understood it more as the years went by. He just looked at me and he said, don't compare yourself to other people. And I thought, what does that got to do with anything? But then, as time went by, I began to realize that's what we all do. Oh, she's so much more spiritual than I am. He meditates so much longer. He's such a wonderful teacher. She's such, and when we do that, it's how the ego works. The ego defines itself by separating from other things. The soul, by contrast, exists because it's united with everything. So if you see a beautiful spiritual soul, don't compare and put yourself, oh, I'm so much lower, because then we get discouraged. But if we just think, that's the way I want to be, and we move in that direction, then that helps us spiritually. And so really it's so important not to measure your spiritual stature. In fact, you can't. You have no idea. I have no idea. I remember once, after about 10 years there at Ananda Village, we were riding in a car with Swamiji, and he was in the front seat. I think he was driving. Jyotish was sitting in the other seat. I was in the back. And Swami was talking about how some of the disciples had grown so much spiritually. And I surprised myself because I kind of blurted out, well, gosh, I haven't changed very much. And Swami got almost angry and he said, how can you say that? You're an entirely different person than when you came. I couldn't see it, and you can't see it. You can't see how you've changed, but that's the beauty of the spiritual path. It's like, they use the image of this shedding the layers of an onion. One by one, the bad tendencies fall away and we become different. But just to remember, spirituality cannot be measured by any outward standard. And there's the beautiful story from autobiography when this rather self-important man comes to 𝗷𝗻𝗀𝗃𝗁 and he says, Master, I am ready for the higher Kriyas now. I have done the lower Kriyas so well. And 𝗷𝗻𝗀𝗃𝗁 says, very well, just wait a moment, sit down. And then the little humble man, they call it in the autobiography, Brinde the postman. I love Brinde the postman. He comes in and Sri Yukteswar looks at him, 𝗷𝗻𝗀𝗃𝗁 looks at him and says, Brinde, are you ready for the higher Kriyas? Oh no, Master, just doing the first Kriya elevates me so much, I can't deliver my mails. No more. And then 𝗷𝗻𝗀𝗃𝗁 looked at the proud man and as if to say, you see, this man is ready because there's no sense of self-importance. So just keep working at it. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't measure your progress, but day by day make as Sri Yukteswar said, everything in the future will improve if we are making the right spiritual effort now. And I have never known, and we've known thousands of devotees, I would say, all over the world. I have never known one person, not one, who has left the path if that person was sincerely trying. They always find a way forward. But it's when we stop trying and say, oh, it isn't for me, or it's too hard, then the world will reel us in very quickly. So it's really so much there's so much to look forward to if we just keep making the right effort. So I will, and a question from all of you? Okay, I'll read the next question.
Do they need a joke?
Yes, absolutely.
During the question and answer sessions, Devi and I often tell a little joke.
He tells a little.
I tell a little joke, just to show that the path doesn't always have to be grim and serious. It can be filled with light. So this takes place in India. There's a little beagle that belongs to a family, but it gets out of the door. Beagle dog, a little one. And it goes out into the forest, and it comes on a kind of clearing in the forest, and there's a pile of bones there. And so the beagle goes up, and he's chewing on one of the bones, and then he hears a soft padding, and he kind of glances, and he sees a tiger coming. And he knows that his short little legs aren't going to be able to outrun the tiger. But this is a very clever beagle. So as the tiger gets close, the beagle says, you know, I think this is the best tiger I've eaten lately. And the tiger gets nervous and runs away. But there's more. So there's a monkey that has watched this, and he thinks, oh, this is my chance to get in the good graces of the tiger. So he goes off and he finds the tiger and he tells him what happened. And now, a while later, the tiger is angry and he's coming back, and the monkey is proud and happy that he's going to be in his good graces. And the beagle glances and he quickly understands what's happened. So again, he runs to the pile of bones. And when the tiger gets close, the beagle says, I don't know what could have happened. I sent that monkey off an hour ago to bring me another tiger, and he isn't back yet. And the tiger runs away.
We shared that joke at a gathering in India, and there was a little boy sitting in the front row. I'll never forget. He laughed so hard, he fell out of his chair.
Okay.
How many tigers does it take? No. This is kind of a serious question, so we have to change the mood. I wanted to ask the question this morning because I spoke with a woman who recently lost her husband. How can one face grief? What are the pitfalls, and how can grief be overcome in a positive way?
Okay. Well, first off, we need to do our best to accept the circumstances that come into our life. One, the losses, everybody in this room is going to face losses in their lives. And if we push them away or deny them and or think that they come to us unfairly, we set up a negative mental pattern. So the first step in working with grief is to accept that it was God's will that this happened, that the husband died. But then it's natural. At Ananda, for those of you who know, we have something called an astral ascension ceremony. It's a beautiful ceremony. And we gather together. We had one just recently at Ananda village. A very dear member of the community died. There was at least as many people in the temple as there are here. And there's a part in the ceremony where it's as if the minister is on behalf of the friends, the congregation, reading something to the soul. And as part of that, it says, we understand that your soul is on the next step of its long journey, and we wish you the very best in your journey along the pathway to God. Let go of all regrets, let go of all attachments, just fly up into the astral world and be with God. And what of us, friend, who are left behind? We too send our love, and we know that we will, by our love, we will be reconnected. We're like threads in a vast tapestry that is woven with increasing beauty as we go along. And so it's our way of saying goodbye in a positive way to the soul of the person who has passed. But that still leaves, even if you have all of the positive elements that you can, it still leaves that human connection, the human heart that is sad at its loss, sad at the losing the closeness and the bond that's there. Remember Master when he lost his mother, he went every morning for 2 or 3 years and cried under a tree, a peepal tree. And He was very, very sad. And then it took years for his heart to open. But then what he really was sad about was not losing his physical mother. He was sad about losing her, who at that age in his life was like his guru. And then he had, through the intercession of a great saint, he had a deep meditation in which God, Divine Mother, appeared to him, and he saw thousands of eyes, pairs of eyes, beautiful eyes. And Divine Mother said to him, I have come to you as many, many mothers, but always, always it has been me in the form of your mother who has come, and I will come ever and again to you. And that settled his heart. We have a beautiful song that we sing, Dark Eyes, that's reminiscent of that. But so there is a grieving process. Don't try to suppress it. Understand that it's the natural, one might say, the natural release of the heart, which that attachment to a mother or a spouse is not a quick release. So let it take its time, and then gradually that emotion will by and large pass, but understand that it may surface at certain holidays, or the person's birthday, or your first Christmas where you're not with that person. Just allow the process to happen. But there's one final thing, and this Darshan pointed out in his book. In 𝗙ฐ์𝘀𝘁𝗴𝗿𝗺, he talks about the meannesses of the heart, which are the things that make the heart contract. And in that, he named grief as one of the meannesses of the heart. And here we have master grieving and finally reconcile. And 𝗙ฐ์𝘀𝘁𝗴𝗿𝗺 is saying grief is a meanness of the heart. Well, Darshan showed the balance here. There's kind of an emotional grief, which is your emotions they aren't settled yet. They're trying to heal themselves. And that has a process, and it takes a certain amount of time. But then there can also be a mental grief where you keep remembering and you draw up this, and that remembering negative experiences or negative thoughts, Master said, is a misuse of God's given power of memory. And so the mental grief is a meanness of the heart where you keep remembering something. And it's the same with revenge or something that happened long ago or some trauma. It's one thing to have the trauma, it's another mentally to refuse or be unable to let that go. And if you keep dwelling on negativity, it contracts the heart. But don't deny the need to grieve, but do it in as healthy a way as possible. And understanding when you're sad, then try to bring up the mental image. In our case of a person from Ananda, bring up the mental image that, oh, aren't you lucky? You're up there with Swami and all of our Gurubhais who have already gone. In fact, a dear friend of ours passed quite young, about a year or two ago, and one of our friends, and it was surprising, an illness came on very quickly, and one of our friends said, that wasn't her time to go. She jumped to the head of the line. Being that she got to go up to the astral world sooner than the rest of us. But yes, it's a process, but neither deny nor dwell on it, but also allow it to happen and hold it up to God.
There's a wonderful article that Master wrote called "Where Are Our Dear Departed Loved Ones?" And it's, if you know, it's in Man's Eternal Quest. And if you know of anyone who is struggling with grief, it's a good article to recommend to them. But in this article, Master talks about that the body's separation of one body from another body in death, that's not the true separation, that's not real separation, because our souls are always united if there is a true bond of love and harmony. And Jyotish mentioned this friend of ours at Ananda village who died shortly before we left to come here. It was a very beautiful story. In fact, Jyotish and I performed the wedding ceremony for he and his wife. They had been married 47 years. But 20 years ago, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And little by little, as time went by, he became more and more crippled and paralyzed. But they were so much in love with each other that it didn't matter. She had been a nurse and was still a nurse, but she cared for him, and it got to the point where he was totally paralyzed in a wheelchair. But then he passed quickly at the end. But she shared with me, towards the end of his life, he would be lying in his recliner chair, not able to move, and he would look at her and he said, "You're so beautiful," because he was seeing only the light, and she could feel that. And then the last day of his life, he started not being able to breathe, and she recognized the symptoms and was taking him to the nearby clinic. And he looked at her. He could not speak very well. You had to really try to understand. And he said, "I'm not in my body anymore." And she said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm with you." And then he died just very shortly after that, within an hour or so. But it's a beautiful thought. I'm not in my body anymore. I'm with you. My soul is free to be with you. And so we need to, in our grieving process, don't build walls that shut out the presence of your loved one. Keep the door open. And I've had many people, in fact, I've experienced myself with my own parents who died some years ago. They'll come to me in dreams and share something very nice. Or my father died when I had been at Ananda only a few years, and he had been very opposed to my coming to Ananda. But then a few months after he passed, he came to me in a dream and he said, "Now I understand why you made this choice, and I'm very happy for you." And he said, "I was very sick at the end of my life, a lot of suffering, but he said, please call your mother." My father from the astral world told me, "Call your mother and tell her that I'm very happy." And I did, and she accepted it. She made her very happy to know that. And so don't build walls because someone isn't in the body anymore. Try to feel their presence by sending them your love, by sharing beautiful memories that you had together. And then life, the words of beautiful words of Swami's song, life flows on like a river that goes to the sea. And it's just, we're all on this great stream of life. Some of us get off sooner than others, but it's a continuation, and nothing ends, but everything. When we enter the astral world, I think we realize, oh, why didn't I see this all the time? Here are all my friends. So it's a wonderful training to feel beyond the physical limitations of this world.
There are many times that we're faced with having a loved one who isn't open to our spiritual path. And how do we help them toward the end? Devi asked this of Swamiji about her father. And Swami said something very beautiful that applies to all of us. He said, your love for him is the best thing that you can do for him. But your love for him connected to you being a disciple will be a great blessing for him. So the fact that we're all disciples and our love for our loved ones, that grace flows through love. Love is one of the aspects of God. And so our love for our loved ones and our love for God makes a connection. Love for God and Guru makes a connection between the person and God and Guru. Even though they themselves may not be open, the grace will flow.
One last thing, and then one last thought. In Autobiography of a Yogi, in the beautiful chapter, The Heart of a Stone Image, where Master's sister is married to a very skeptical, worldly man. It's fun talking about the autobiography because many of you shake your heads. You know the autobiography very well, and you know what I'm talking about. And it's a beautiful story how Master takes his very skeptical, cynical, material brother-in-law and his sister, who's very devout, devotional, to 𝗙𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗺, to the great temple of where Ramakrishna lived. There's the beautiful image of Divine Mother in the form of Kali. And he just said, maybe in this uplifted environment, he says to his sister, your husband's consciousness will be changed. And I won't recount the whole story. It's a beautiful story. But in fact, his brother-in-law is changed and becomes a very serious devotee, a very serious yogi. And then one day, in India, it's the custom that the wife should die before the husband in service. And so his sister one day dresses in her bridal finery, the beautiful sari she wore at her wedding, and because then she leaves the body. But then years later, and then her husband went on to just focus on meditation and self-discipline and advanced very far spiritually. And Master said, then one day, her husband, Master's brother-in-law, was looking at her picture, and some of the relatives heard him saying, you thought you were so smart that you got away early, but I'm coming now too. And he died shortly after that. So the deeper we go in God, the more we're able to feel the presence of our loved ones too. Okay, so.
Here's the final question.
Okay. Oh, this is from our friend, Dylan from Rome. Is even the desire for liberation itself an attachment to be eliminated?
Yes. But there are aspects to this. First of all, a very similar question was asked to anandaassisi. Isn't the desire for God just another desire? And she said, yes, it is. But it is the only desire that ends all other desires. And so the desire for liberation ultimately has to go, but don't let it go until it has eliminated all of the other desires that are lesser ones. And so there are different ways of letting it go. One is that it will pass naturally and finally when we are liberated. If you have the desire for liberation, then you have liberation. You don't need the desire for liberation anymore. And in fact, Master said, it is a stupid prayer to pray for immortality. Why pray for something that you already have? And so these deeper desires, but then also the desire for liberation, there's a time that we should also let that go in terms of our sadhana. God is watching our heart and mind. We don't need to keep reminding Him all of the time. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves, that's different. God, I want liberation, I want liberation, I want liberation. Come to me now, come to me now. God knows our thoughts, and God will come when He's good and ready to come, when we're good and ready to have him come. But the thought or the prayer is good because it's an affirmation for ourselves. So we aren't reminding God, we're reminding ourselves that we want liberation. But then, just as we were saying in talking about prayer, there comes a time, don't pray for a result, even liberation. Just pray for God's grace. And there comes a point, it's almost hard, it's a little delicate. You hold the desire for liberation up, but at the same time, you hold up the very powerful faith that God knows everything he needs to know about you. And he knows he's heard this prayer of your heart for liberation. And he's waiting until the right circumstances. And then he will lift up your consciousness and you will achieve that liberation. And then the desire will go. But we read beautiful stories, but again in the autobiography, about the chapter of cosmic consciousness, where Master, obviously he had been strenuously working for that experience in all of his meditations, all of his life. Of course, some of this is really, it's done kind of as a show for our benefit. We have a friend in India who is the son of the daughter of 𝗙𝗁𝗁𝗆 Bose, who was one of Master's closest friends when he was growing up. Master, as you know, had several sisters and some brothers, and his house was always in uproar. And he wanted a quiet space where he could go and have a calmer environment. And so Divine Mother told him, go to the park and you'll find someone there. So he went to the park, and there was this man running, and Master was a very, very fast runner. And he went up and challenged him to a race. And the man was, or the young boy, but he was 2 or 3 years older than Master. And he was a very good athlete, and he saw this kind of young, Master at the time was very skinny, saw this young skinny kid challenging him to a race. He said, all right, I'll race you. And he raced Master, and Master beat him around the track. And he said, all right, we have to do that again. Master said, okay. And he beat him again. And that bond formed a very close friendship. And so Master lived more at 𝗙𝗁𝗁𝗆 Bose's house after that than he did at his own house. And that house is in Calcutta, and Ananda has it. So if you go on pilgrimage, you can go there and be there and see their beds and where they were together. But the point being is that the daughter of 𝗙𝗁𝗁𝗆 Bose told her son, our friend, this story. She said that her dad told her that when Master was there, he was a young boy, he, still in high school, so 12, 13, 14. He said very often in the morning, Master would come over to the house, or he was at the house, and they would go to meditate. And he said, 𝗙𝗁𝗁𝗆, you watch the door. Sometimes 𝗘𝗚𝗚 the Sanskrit teacher, would come, and Master would say, 𝗙𝗁𝗁𝗆, you watch the door, make sure nobody comes in. And the two of them would go into meditation and levitate. And so when Master was a very, very high soul, higher than what he wants to project himself. But nonetheless, we come back to this strong, strong desire for that final cosmic consciousness liberation in this lifetime. He'd had it before. And that desire propelled him until finally Sri Yukteswar said, the time has come. It's right now. The time has come for God to grant that wish. And then he did it. But Master himself was showing us that there's a process. Think of it as a process of ripening. And if the conscious apple says, I want to drop from the tree, I want to drop from the tree, God is saying, you can't, you're not ripe yet. But the day comes when that apple is right, and God, through the power of His gravity, allows the apple to return to the earth.
I'll close with a story that kind of ties together a lot of the themes we've been talking about. And this is a story of a young man in India and who comes to his guru's ashram, a youth, and he said, I give my life to you, Guruji. And his guru blesses him and accepts him. And he says, very good, go out into the forest now and gather wood for the cooking stoves. And the young man does this, and every day he goes out into the forest and he gathers armloads of wood and to be fed into the stoves in the kitchen. And this goes on for some time. And then one day he's going about his dharma, his service, and one of the logs starts to fall from his arms, and he reaches forward, and a lock of his hair gets caught in the branch, and it pulls it out. And he looks, and the hair is white. And he thinks, oh my goodness, I came to my guru, I was a young man, and all I've done my whole life is carry wood for the cook stoves, and now I can see by the color of my hair that I'm an old man, and what have I done with my life? And he starts to cry, and just then his guru comes running up to him from his little hut, and he says, he catches the tear, and he says, don't you know that if a soul as great as you, if one of your tears would fall on the ground, it would cause famine in the land for 7 years? And he touches him, and the man is liberated. He goes into samadhi. So the point of the story is, carry wood, do your dharma, love God, pray for others, help them in their grief, and little by little the day will come, as Master promises. He said, for those of you who stay loyal to this path to the end, not just for this, kind of superficially, but with your heart, those of you who stay loyal to the end, Master said, I or one of our line of gurus will personally come to you at the end of life and usher you into the kingdom of God. That was his promise. So, again, weaving all the themes that we've been talking about, do your techniques, but live throughout the day with God in mind. Help others in their suffering. And karma, it can be ameliorated through the grace of the gurus. And all of these things we've been talking about. But the most important thing is to make that one decision. And that's really all you need to make in life. I am committed till the end. And now you have been asking us a lot of questions. I will ask you one. You don't have to answer me, but you have to answer yourself. What are you doing right now to deepen your relationship with God? And what promise will you make to God, maybe before you go to bed tonight, that will say, I will do this to the end, Master, I promise you. So this is a question I put to all of you, because you can listen to us and think, oh, the very fine words, but unless you make the choice yourself, it's just words, it's just wind that blows away, dust in the wind. But it's up to you to take what we have shared and mold it to form your own life and your own future and your own path to liberation. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. I'll just add a little wrinkle to her homework. think through and make a promise that you feel confident you have the ability to keep. Because if you keep that promise, it will grow and grow into a great strength. And so don't overpromise, but feel something that you feel confident that you can continue to do. So God bless you all, and thank you for being here and sharing the week.
Well, thank you both very, very much. And I know for many of you, you'll be leaving on Friday, so this is your last moment with Jyotish and Devi. And so let's, for now, the last moment. So they have given so much, and they will go on in Spain, then India. And they say it very nicely. They don't look at all the many things they have to do. They say, one day at a time, one day at a time. But it's amazing what they're doing. And so what we can do for them is bless them deeply with lots of strength and inspiration to keep going one day at a time, sharing these deep teachings, sharing the Masters, Swamiji, with all of us everywhere in the world. So please rise. And pray that the divine light and power and love and strength fill them, surround them, keep them safe on their travels. And let's do 3 ohms. And time flies. That year is going to be over before we know it.
Time flies, and soon Devi and I will be flying.
Grazie per la dolce, il dolce? La dolce energia.
Io ho una piccola domanda. Stamattina qualcuno mi ha chiesto